It's been an incredible day of CPD. There have been, I believe, over 50 workshops, out of which we could only attend 6 because they were happening, there were 6 periods of them. So this one is a special edition Maths Chat Live where we've all been to conference, we've seen some incredible workshops, our heads absolutely buzzing. I know I've got this mix of buzz and tiredness from screen time and everything else, and what is missing sometimes is actually just this type of talk between colleagues and kind of sharing their thoughts, articulating, and it's not just for us. We'd love you to get involved on Twitter or YouTube, and to get involved just reply to this tweet with the video that's coming up or use the hashtag MathsChatLive and do get involved. So moving on to our fabulous panelists, just going to introduce myself quickly. I'm a online maths tutor, teach maths from everything from number bonds to A-level maths, and the host of Maths Chat Live. So I'll ask you to introduce yourself. I'll just introduce in the order I see it on screen. So let's go with you first, Gemma.
Hi, I'm Gemma. I'm the second in department in Nottingham.
And Lucy.
Hi, I'm Lucy. I'm assistant head of maths and head of academic enrichment in Gloucestershire.
Phil.
Hi, I'm Phil, and I run a maths program that allows students to get help with the topics that they're struggling on from other students via an app.
Dave.
Hi, I'm Dave. I'm a lead practitioner in a school in Bristol.
Rhiannon.
Hi, I'm Rhiannon Rainbow, and I'm School Improvement Lead Maths for the Greensill Learning Trust.
Nikki.
Hey, I'm Nikki. I'm a maths teacher in Lichfield.
David.
I'm David Farr. I'm known as Dags Maths on Twitter. I'm a lead of maths in Suffolk.
And finally, Matt.
Hi, I'm Matt Mann. I teach in a secondary school in Bromsgrove, and I have the privilege to work with just maths colleagues Chris and Mel. So hello if you're watching me.
Oh, they were brilliant last time. Yeah, they were on Maths Chat Live as well. Fantastic. So yes, great to see everyone from different parts of the country, and I believe there were people from all over the world on the thing, on the MathsConf. So yeah, there was the 3 of you had it was your first ever MathsConf presentation. It's an important landmark. Rob Smith's already on Periscope saying hello and everything. Hi Matt and everyone. Thank you, Rob, for hosting the party as well last night. Good spirits. So we could start with your experience of how it was for you. We could start with Lucy, and then Dave and Rhiannon can go here.
Yeah, so it was incredible. I was really nervous first time I've done it, but actually the team were amazing. Just so much communication beforehand, really put us at ease. Let us do as many kind of things that we needed to do to practice beforehand. Made sure the tech was working. And just there's always kind of a fear that what if nobody turns up or nobody watches or anybody says anything like horrible in the chat or doesn't like what I say or doesn't agree with it. But just the support was amazing. Everybody was really kind. Everybody was really nice, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. Came away buzzing, and yeah, definitely would do it again. It was great, and just a really nice team atmosphere.
Must feel like a relief as well, having kept that out of all that preparation. It certainly was for me. Once I got it out, it was not what I thought it would be. It wasn't as nerve-wracking. It's just a big relief it's a congratulations, a major professional landmark as well. So it'll hopefully.
Obviously, it was a long time from when I think we signed up back in October. So a long time kind of coming, and it is obviously quite a strange thing doing it online because you can't see the audience or judge anybody's reaction. So yeah, you just kind of talk into the void a little bit. But no, it was really nice, and yeah, the relief afterwards is great. Done, didn't go wrong.
Over to you, Dave and Rhiannon.
Yeah. So for me, it was absolutely. But I can't say any more than what Lucy just said. It was just absolutely buzzing from the end of it. It was daunting. It was nerve-wracking. It was as Lucy said, you worry about what people are going to think about what you say, and it was just an amazing experience to go through and to learn from. So I really feel like I've developed and learned those myself as well. But it was massive imposter syndrome from just seeing the wealth of experience and expertise that were out there and in the rooms as well, watching the presentations. And so just to sort of be a part of that community and be able to sort of join join in with some of those really rich conversations through the presentation and watching other people. You just learn something new every time, don't you? And it was at the end of it, I've got that balance of exhaustion, but just absolutely thrilled to have been a part of it. And it was amazing.
Yeah, and it's just I really liked having Dave, so that we got to do it together. I think that just made it a little bit easier and took the edge off. But as you said, Dave, just some of the names in there, some of the names in the room where if you were to stop and think for a minute, it would be quite daunting. But the community is just so incredibly supportive, and I think that's the brilliant part of it is everybody wants the best for one another, and we really want to help to support each other and chivvy each other along and celebrate everybody who's doing what they can today and just giving a little bit of themselves. And even though when it would come through on Twitter, so and so has just chosen your workshop, and I was thinking, oh my goodness, I don't know which is worse, nobody turning up or lots of people turning up, But no, it's I've already messaged Dave today and said, okay, so what are we going to do for our next one?
It was brilliant.
Yeah, and a few people tune in. Rob Smith, obviously, he's commenting, and again, I should echo again. Thanks so much for the LaSalle network and Mark McCourt in particular for setting this up. I'm hoping, I don't promise anything, I'm hoping that Mark will join us for a little bit during this live stream. It's been a long day for the LaSalle team, so for a very small bit anyway. He should get a knighthood from the Queen for setting up something as phenomenal as this, which has worked so well online and also got teachers to share ideas and resources in these really tricky times. Definitely we are very, very grateful for that space that LaSalle have made and that and scaled so well online. I'll open it up to the actual workshops. Anyone's got any thoughts on any specific workshops that...
Oh, so many thoughts. It's where to start, really. Maybe start at period 1.
Yeah, start period 1, yeah.
Yeah, actually. Yeah, go through each period.
Okay, so I went to see Larissa Chun talking about dyscalculia. I can never pronounce it properly. But there's so little known, but the wealth of experience coming from people working with students who struggle. Obviously, Atul, you do a lot of work as well with students who struggle with their number sense. But just listening to the ideas and listening to the strategies, she based it on a primary experience and said, oh, it's probably not relevant to secondary. Whereas I thought as a secondary teacher, this is so relevant to me because students come to me in secondary at this stage and I haven't got the experience of dealing with it. Because it is less common, obviously, than the majority of students we teach. So really, really interesting listening to her and getting, again, great nuggets of information.
What was one of her kind of top tips, if she had one?
She was talking about the concepts, the processes and the language, and just tying it all together, which we know as we teach anyway, we don't put them in isolation, but it's so much more important that processes can easily be lost if you don't have any number sense, and you've got to have that concept and keep going back to the concept and keep going back to the number sense concepts every time and using the same sort of language each time and explaining the language. It is the complete two basics and not assuming that anything has been necessarily remembered or taken in, but being repetitive about that number sense. I think the number sense thing for me was the most important part.
Is it anything?
Sorry.
Yeah, you guys speak.
I was just going to say, I thought the way that she included the video of the person she was working with as well, the student she was working with, and showing how she was using the manipulatives alongside the more formal strategies as well was really, really informative and just opened up a bit of discussion in the chat. I thought that was brilliant. And it wasn't just a video of a student using those concepts and getting it absolutely perfectly right. It was the student struggling through concepts and being reminded and prompted and scaffolded I thought that was so powerful.
I wasn't in that.
I think your mic cut out, Dave. Is that true for everyone else?
Yes.
Yeah.
You'll have to do a second take on that, Dave. I think I'll just still cut out. Your mic still cut out.
Okay, just while Dave's working with his mic in that video, the one thing that really just captured me was she was taking away 8, and she was literally taking away 8, and she took away 7 pieces, and she was told, oh, you've taken away 7, you were supposed to take away, how many were you supposed to take away? And instead of knowing to take away 1 more, she had to get the 7 back again to take away the 8. And that was really eye-opening about that was where her number sense was.
Yeah, it's so important to have knowledge of strategies to support these students, isn't it? And understand the building blocks needed at Key Stage 2, even before they get to us at Key Stage 3, isn't it? And it's not, if I'm being really, really honest, it's not something that I've been aware of until like the last few years, when I've really started to delve into it and think about the barriers for some students.
Yeah, it's one of the takeaways I've got for my next session. I'm going to be, or for the next MathsConf that we go to, I'm going to be looking at a lot of primary resources. I'm a secondary teacher, but I really need to understand the building blocks of what the students are coming in with on a deeper level. There was some really sort of informative piece of work out there today, and I think that's something which I need to look a lot closer at myself.
That was something Mary Myatt raised with us, wasn't it, when we spoke to her, is how much, so Dave and I met her when we were prepping for a book club session, shameless plugging, and and she just said, how much have you worked with your primary colleagues on this, and how many conversations have you had? And we couldn't really answer that as well as we should be able to. And the work I'm doing with the so Rachel Willerton and I are running a couple of 5 to 8 continuity groups for our local maths hub, and just starting those conversations, and it made me realize that actually there's just this big void of knowledge I don't have for where the students have come from and what I can do to help students who still have those gaps or still have those areas to develop, because I'm assuming and building on from things and I don't know how to take it back. So I need to have lots more conversations with primary colleagues.
I think so, and something I got from that as well is the more from this conference and from delivering as well, the more that I know, the more I realise I don't know as well. And there's so many. So at the end of the session, I'm thinking there's so many more things I should have said that I wanted to say that I didn't say, and it's that sort of building of knowledge, and maybe that's something that I could have added in my bit at the beginning about running your first conference. Is at the beginning I felt like sort of really sort of nervous, excited. At the end I felt really relieved and buzzing, but I also realised how much more there is to learn, and I really like Nikki talked about the idea of sort of almost like vulnerability, but looking at that struggle, and so we really try to build that into our session. But I really like the way that the community sort of comes together to look at those misconceptions, but to support each other to overcome them and to learn and grow together. It was fantastic.
We check your sound again, David, see if you're
Still bad? No, it's no good.
still
Nothing.
there. Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah. Oh, I'm back. Go. I just wondered whether sort of this is becoming a little bit more of an issue, because even at that very young age, students don't play physically with things at all. They don't throw dice, count numbers. It's all on a screen. I mean, we're sort of in that position now where, you know, you don't play stakes and ladders. You just hit a button, it does all the adding up for you, etc. And whether that's actually adding to that at a younger age and sort of feeding back into that sort of, in a way, weakness before they've even started at sort of primary school.
Just need some of these.
Yeah.
It's the cheapest manipulative, really, like for your bang for your buck. It's one of the best manipulatives you can do. Like like really complicated stuff, like making equations in color, geometric series, arithmetic progressions, linear sequences, equations of lines, all sorts of secondary stuff with Charlotte Hawthorne uses, obviously negative, positive numbers, loads and stuff. Johnny Hall's done an entire workshop on these.
Do you mean more outside of maths lessons? So like you said, like snakes and ladders, or just like playing with things in the kitchen and sand and water? Like now they just don't do that sort of thing so much in their free time. So not just what they do in maths lessons, but perhaps they do less mathematical playing in just their life in the evenings and weekends and stuff than they perhaps used to.
I think that's built into other things as well, though, doesn't it? Like playing with a deck of cards.
No.
So often now, so much of what is done and talked about, and students are asked questions on, has a certain assumption level regarding them knowing the makeup of a deck of cards, and that's a very physical and tangible thing to do, and we just don't do it so much anymore.
I have to say, I got caught out about probably 4 or 5 years ago when I got a standard sort of probability lesson that used packs of cards, and suddenly realised that half of the kids in the top set year 9 didn't know what a pack of cards was, and just ended up having a whole lesson actually introducing them to a pack of cards. And I still remember one little lad at the end and basically went, "Oh, this is the thing on the poker games online," and he didn't have no concept of what a pack of cards was, and yet he knew what a game of poker was online, but he didn't even know that there was 52 cards in a pack. So basically I was waiting for him to get a little bit older and maybe he'd be the kind of person to play against, I think, maybe. The exam boards have been good, actually, haven't they? And taking a lot of them references out. You don't longer get questions about pack of cards because they've learnt the fact that half the kids don't know what they are. And given lockdown, it'll be coins as well soon because no one sees coins or notes any longer.
Yeah, coins or notes.
As long as they don't replace all the questions with computer game references that we don't understand.
Bringing on to the exam board, the one thing that I saw in Joe Morgan's I thought was particularly good was before we even got into the sort of meat of the presentation, was looking at the idea of looking at the examiner's report to really understand the misconceptions. And I thought that was just such an easy sort of quick win, short takeaway for me was if I want to understand what misconceptions can happen with this method, go to the examiner's report, go to the exam board and just find out what they've got to say about it, because they got the wealth of data and they can sort of share it so easily and it's out there, and just it felt like a really quick win as a takeaway.
Craig Button's diagnostic questions are brilliant for that. That's why you can look and see what former students have answered instead, and not just what answer they've given, but yet they have to actually justify their reasoning and why did you put this answer, and that's really interesting to see why, like their actual justification. Sometimes actually do the calculation and say why I put this and why I think it's right and it's wrong. It's quite nice to see the misconceptions. I think it's quite nice to share those misconceptions with students as well, and just say this is what some people think and this is why that's wrong and this is what we actually have to do.
I think they're great to get the students to actually write them sometimes as well. So some of my students, I've got them to make their own question, because it's not an easy task to pick 3 wrong answers that have a common misconception. So I'd ask them with a sort of relatively straightforward topic to say, here's the right answer, here's the question. Your task now is to write the other 3 answers and to describe why they're the wrong answers and why you've chosen those numbers. And so it can be quite a rich task as well, I think.
Actually, I was doing that as a CPD task because I wrote a few questions, diagnostic questions, in the first lockdown, actually just to write for my own year 8 class. I think it took me a day to write 12 questions, and then subsequently we've taken that into our department CPD and go, right, we all know the right answer, what's the 3 clever wrong answers sort of thing, in a way. And it's the discussion it's prompted, just one question is probably been one of the richest things I've sort of ever come up with accidentally.
Absolutely, yeah.
Fantastic. We've got the LaSalle man, Mark McCourt himself in the house. So thanks on our behalf. I think you're only joining us for a little bit, so we'll get you to post some of your own reflections on your side of things.
Well, it's good to be here, mate. Been quite a busy day, so I won't hang around very long. It's been a few things. How did you guys find it? Was it thumbs up? Good.
Yeah, incredible.
Thumbs up.
Tricky to run these bloody online ones, but
Oh, it's so slick that you do such an amazing job, and like as I said before you came, we've been so supported, and it's just been incredible. Yeah. So,
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
You ran you
there
did
are
the workshop,
3.
Lucy, yeah? Your first one.
yeah. Yeah, and it was you just made. I mean, I was still really scared, but it couldn't have been made easier for me to do it. So yeah, thank you.
Oh, brilliant. That's really good to hear. And
3 of us are first-time presenters, so thank you so much, because, well, we're all still here smiling, so that's a really good thing.
Yeah, you've still got some energy left. Oh, I can't see everyone. I didn't know you were there, Rhiannon. You just popped up.
Yeah, just put us on a gallery view for on the top.
Oh yeah.
Top right.
Ah, there we go. I can see everyone now.
I'd also say, Mark, it's really nice and a really great gesture of giving people that present sort of that permanent access to it. I think that once again, on behalf, I think of a lot of maths teachers, the sound complete maths just keep coming up and make it easy for people, and you give us so much back to everyone as well. So I think that was a really nice gesture at the end of the day. So yeah, thank you on behalf of all the people that will present in the future and have presented.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very happy to do it. It's the amount of time people put into these sessions. Like, there's a whole bunch of you that have presented today. You must be knackered. Putting these sessions together, then delivering it, and is the tech going to work, and are there people listening? And it's the least we can do, really, to say thank you. We made MathsConf deliberately. David, you've been around for a while, right? We remember the days of conferences and things being really rather expensive, and this was one of the things we wanted to do with MathsConf, was make sure that anyone could come to it. But that means the events are loss making. They cost us a lot of money to run. We make huge losses on MathsConf, so we can't pay the speakers and fancy hotels, but also I never wanted to have a conference of people rocking up and getting their £2,000 speaker fee that haven't been in the classroom for 20 years. What's the point of that? I wanted to hear from teachers that they're in the classroom yesterday with all this stuff that's going on in the classroom. I want to hear from those people. I wanted to create something where we said teachers are intellectuals. They have theories, and those theories are worth sharing. It's not some external other thing that there are teachers and then there are education experts. It's the wrong way around. It's the people in the classrooms doing, what's the figure? I can't remember the figure now. The non-trivial decision figure per day is like 3,000 non-trivial decisions that teachers make per day. Well, that's 3,000 experiments, right? You're continually, every single day, thinking, well, I'll never do that again. I'll never give year 8 the Pritt sticks before the lesson begins. That's who I wanted to hear from. I wanted to hear from people that are carrying out those thousands of experiments every day, day in, day out, and give a platform for that. And I've tried to pop into
richness of a range of.
Yeah, absolutely. That's and it's part of why we don't have. There's no party line at the conference, right? I've been in so many workshops today. I've been in all of your workshops, those of you that spoke. So did anyone else go to Atol's, and don't you just watch Atol presenting online and thinking, how can anyone be this slick? It's just too good at it. But yeah, that idea of lots and lots of diverse thought, no party line, let people share, it's our event, and it's something that I set up. But there are workshops at MathsConf where I don't agree with that. I don't think that is true, that thing. But I still want a place for people to come and say, this is what's important to me. These are the things I'm thinking about in my classroom. And they're super important. There were things I said 20 years ago where if I heard me say it now, I think, I don't agree with that. I don't think that's true. So it's not an indication that someone is wrong. It's just an indication that they have room for growth, right? So that's what we were trying to do. Anyway, I'm rabbiting.
Now, Mark, I remember I went to your multiple representations day in London about 2.5 years ago, and you had this thing, this little exercise on Multibase where you do the column subtraction. And I did a mechanical engineering degree, so I was not familiar with Multibase. So my brain was burning after that workshop, and I made a vow to myself, I'm gonna like look up this Multibase stuff. So it's been, obviously you say my presentation was slick, but that was just the format of delivering it. The content is completely inspired by you and LaSalle. It's like you kept going on about you were the guy who used to bang on about Multibase, and now there's like me, Charlotte, and Ashton banging on about Multibase relentlessly on Twitter. And I felt, I learned so much, and then I experimented. I did it. I taught Multibase to children like as young as 7, dyscalculia. Like I just tried with every single part. I was like, once I got into it, it was like it was mind blowing. I saw your vision of why Multibase is so important. And this is my 3rd presentation, and I really carefully thought about how to present it, and this is my and you gave me this opportunity. It's almost like full circle. I came to a MathsConf in 2017 as a lonely online tutor. Nobody even knew what the hell online tutoring is, and I knew no one at all. And here we are 3 years later. You helped me start up MathsChatLive. You were on the first 6 episodes. Your finger was always on the pulse, and that's just the beauty of the network you created. And so again, it's my personal thanks as well for the CPD I received from you personally through those workshops you ran. I went to like 6 or 7 of them, and MathsChatLive and the whole network as well.
Your session was great, mate. Really well. And that thing of this was the hypothesis of MathsConf when we started it. Wouldn't it be great if we all knew each other? That was the main hypothesis. Wouldn't it be great if everyone teaching mathematics knew each other? So, we all have, you have a dodgy lesson that destroys you, that thing, you're only as good as your last lesson. Wouldn't it be great if you could pick up the phone and talk to someone and say, I've had a shocking week, and they say, yeah, I've had a shocking week as well. Let's go to the pub, or let's meet up before MathsConf, or whatever it is. And also try and create a place where, like, I remember that thing you're talking about, Atul, that event, and I do that thing of, there you go, as an engineer, qualified, very bright guy, I bet you can't do subtraction. Then you're like, well, of course I can do subtraction. I put the thing on the board, and you think, maybe I can't do subtraction. But to create it in a way where it's just a bunch of people who love maths talking about it together. Yeah, the days of there are experts and then there are teachers, they have to end. You guys are all experts, and we should be able to have a laugh with each other by having little mathematical surprises with each other, thinking, whoa, I hadn't thought about that. I love that kind of thing. I thought your session was brilliant, and Charlotte's was great as well. Yeah, it was really cool. I'm going to have to dash in a moment, guys, but I would love to hear. I'd love to hear your one takeaway. The thing I get people to do at MathsConf where they write a postcard at the end. What's your promise to yourself? So today, if you thought, I'll go and try that, or I'll go and change that, or I want to read that book, or there's, I'm going to go and try this tool in my classroom. And I love the idea of people write these postcards. I'll try this in the next couple of months. It's not saying I've heard something, I think that is 100% correct and I'm going to change my pedagogy. It's just saying I'm going to try that in my practice and see what happens. I love that idea. So just before I dash, because I do have to dash, I'd really love to hear like your key, what would you write on your postcard from today?
I'd go with the counters that Atul even showed earlier. I've never really used them. I've watched them used, but also with Jonathan Hall's using it on MathSpot gives me more flexibility to use it than some of the classes, like the Pritt sticks you mentioned earlier. They might be used for other things rather than what I wanted to do, but the illustrations and just how he was using them so simply through some quite complex ideas, I think is something that's cheap, easy, simple to do on Monday, if need be, virtually. So that's one from me.
I love that, I will change something on Monday, I'll try something on Monday. How cool is that? What a great way to spend the weekend. I think the only use, as far as my year 8 are concerned, Dave, the only use of Pritt sticks is sticking them on your friend's forehead. That's the only thing they thought they were useful.
Yeah, for me, I think it came from Jonathan Hall's and Atul's sessions. Is I've hardly ever touched upon or used multibase in my own maths or my own teaching, and you know, I've been doing it now for nearly 20 years, and that is something I need to rectify immediately. And it was just reignited for me today, an interest in it and the puzzle and the challenge that it brings. And hopefully now I can help to bring that into my work with students and other colleagues too.
Brilliant. That's music to my ears. You know, how can children know what place value means if they've only seen one example of it? Base 10 is just one example. So how can they possibly understand the depth of the concept and the idea? So, music to my ears.
If I can share one of mine as well, from Joe Morgan's presentation, and the idea of method selection and having an activity or an exercise where that's the core of the exercise. So it's choosing which method you're going to use. We're not maybe so interested in getting to the end there, but which method would you use and why? I think that would be a really interesting thing to try next week.
Yeah, it has a massive impact on long-term memory. Huge impact, it really does. Now, either it's perspective of camera or Nikki has the biggest glass of wine I think I've ever seen in
It might be camera, but it's gin and tonic as well. So.
Oh my God,
yeah.
It's a pint glass of gin.
Absolutely. Just what you need after a MathsConf, just to relax after everything that's buzzing around in your head.
So Nikki, if you still have the power of thought, what was your
but I've already talked about Larissa's work that she was doing with dyscalculia and the concepts, the processes, and the language. Hatching as well from Lucy. I love Venn diagrams. I'd never even thought of hatching. Just those little nuggets, which you think you know a topic quite well, but you never know everything. So Lucy, yours was great with probability, with all those little nuggets throwing in about things. So those as well.
Oh, thank you.
It was very cool.
Yeah.
And that, like you say, those little nuggets were part of designing a workshop. So you're giving very, very careful thought to a tiny bit of the curriculum or a tiny idea. And then your colleagues, your colleagues haven't had the chance to give huge amount of thought to that tiny one thing. So it's a great way of sharing those little nuggets to pick up. What about you, Lucy?
I mean, gosh, there's so many that I want to catch up on as well. There's Atul's happened at the same time as mine, so I didn't catch it, and Joe's at the same time as Charlotte. So there's lots I still want to see. I think something that I'd really like to do after seeing Nathan's and after seeing a few sessions before at the mini maths conference as well, is just to perhaps add a bit more storytelling into my maths. I think I go very much in and just, we do the maths and I tell you how to do it, and they do some sums and I mark it, and that's that. But yeah, really to try and get some of the history maths in there. And obviously we've got, it's very topical at the minute, isn't it, to include diversity, and so just really going to try and make an effort to do that. Especially, I can't wait to get back in my own classroom, and I really want to kind of change all my displays and really give some thought as to, talking about the people that gave us the maths that we're using every day as well, and I'm using it. So yeah, I thought Nathan's session was amazing. Really good.
Wasn't Nathan's just mind-blowingly good session?
Very good.
Amazing, really was. Just incredible. And as an old, I have to do the little top and tail of the morning intro and the end of the day. I have to get a bloody young person to help me work the computer to make it do those transitions and things. And then you see someone like Nathan presenting like that.
I know, and his whole slides and PowerPoint, everything was amazing. Very good.
And that's where we go back with the richness as presenters as well, because Nathan's an ITT at the moment, and he's been able to present to experienced teachers and us to go, oh, we've learned something. So absolutely fantastic.
It is really great, isn't it? Certainly in my day, the idea of being able to present at an international conference in your trainee year, people would have just blocked you from doing it. You wouldn't have been allowed. So that's why I wanted this platform.
I think it's so I've heard, I don't know how many maths teachers there are in the country, but here we are, we're all planning the same lessons and we're all kind of delivering the same curriculum. And is that a waste of time? Should we have a central resource where we all just pull our lessons from? And yet actually, because we do all have our own slight different takes on things, then there's always something to learn from each other, and that's amazing, isn't it? We can come to these things and go to every single session and, you know, go to conferences all, you know, a couple of times a year and come away and have learned something from everybody. Somebody always does something better than you, or something nice that you haven't thought of before. And like, I love that. That's really great. I'd hate if we were all doing the same thing all the time.
Yeah, it feels great. And to get through a long day, that's part of how you get through it, all these little buzzing ideas. I see Gemma's getting drunk as well.
Oh,
So before you're too intoxicated, Gemma, what's your takeaway?
I think it's similar to Lucy's. We all get so sort of not bogged down, but your focus is on the curriculum and the lesson and what you're teaching that lesson, and actually just thinking about that richness. And it was briefly mentioned in the Dyscalculia one about telling stories, and then Nathan's telling stories, and then a few weeks ago on the Teach Meets one, we had Sudhi who kept talking about the richness of those stories, and it's a brilliant engager for the students in your classroom, because like you said, we're all passionate, aren't we? And sometimes when you go, right, okay, hand this out and I'll teach you this, and do you understand this, and let's get and like the algebra tiles can help tell that story as well, almost, I think. So that's, for me, it's slowing down and probably doing away with some things and bringing in more of that passion so that the children can feed off that, I think, and the storytelling and the richness. And yeah.
First session was like that a bit as well, wasn't it? Just bringing the joy into it, because if you've got that joy, you can share it with the students and you can impart that enthusiasm in them.
There's also a thing that we are wired for it. You know, Homo sapiens have been learning through storytelling for literally tens of thousands of years, and we seem to have given up on that. That narrative is very important for acquiring new knowledge. Really, really important. And Phil, what about you? You've got quite a different perspective as well.
Well, I think sort of what I picked up on is sort of the storytelling. I mean, I think, as you said, sort of you've been telling stories for so long, and sort of it almost makes me think of sort of Aesop's fables, that, you know, you got a little story and each one has a little nugget of information. And so if you can sort of, rather than everything being sort of fragmented and sort of you teach one topic in isolation and then another topic, sort of if you can sort of draw that string together and almost, you know, like you said, Homo sapiens, if you can draw out some sort of evolution, I think that sort of really helps it put everything into context. So it's sort of not just individual beads, but, you know, you can actually draw a little line through each one, and then it sort of will just be able to stay in a student's mind sort of forever.
Yeah, absolutely. You're basically describing schema building. I mean, mathematics is interconnected webs of ideas, and those ideas are connected via narrative and via story. So it's super important. What about you, Matt?
I think for me, well, I jumped school last September, so it was kind of quite a move. But being sort of reunited with Mel from Just Maths and actually working with Seeger, and just the last workshop for me with just preparing for year 10. And now that you sort of year 11's going on with tags or CAGs or whatever you call it, it's like, how can we really focus on year 10s? You know, when do we start? Actually, when do we start sort of proper intervention? You know, what topics should we really do? So the crossover topics have always been like quite fundamental stone to foundation or higher. Always do think to myself about crossover. I'm like thinking, well, actually, is that almost sort of like basically just the primary curriculum, like sort of year 6 sats? You know, how much of the primary curriculum's actually in the crossover? Because it is quite scary actually how much, you know, how much, you know, how similar is it to a SATs paper compared to, say, a foundation GCSE paper? I think I might have discussed it with you, Mark, probably like last summer actually, when I think when we had our chat. I don't know what other people think about that. You know, how similar is it between a year 6 SATs paper and a GCSE foundation?
Well, give a switched on year 6 child a foundation GCSE paper, take the word GCSE paper off it, they'll pass it without much problem at all. And so many, because of that false dichotomy of primary, secondary, so many people in secondary don't realize how sophisticated maths in primary is. It really is quite sophisticated. Yeah, it's such an important point. Atul, I'm being badgered to be elsewhere, so I'm going to have to jump off. But I'm sure you'll cover your key takeaway.
I'll cover it. Yeah, I'll cover it. Well,
recording and catch up. Thank you so much for coming today, guys, and those of you that contributed. Really, really appreciate it. Yeah, I hope you have an interesting discussion on the rest of it. But
thank you, Mark, for everything you've done again from all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much, Mark.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you, Mark.
So who have we got left then? Dave and Atul. We didn't get your takeaways, did we?
So you got my one, do you mean other Dave?
No, I got confused with the two Daves then. So you then, Atul, what was yours?
Well, that's good. I had all that time to think about my takeaways. put on the spot there. Yeah, I mean, I thought Charlotte Hawthorne's workshop was really good. I thought I've been using algebra tiles for 3 years. I really thought I knew it all, but actually she's completely just got a new viewpoint on it. And Charlotte Hawthorne is one of those secondary teachers who's really mastered teaching very, very good primary maths. So she's already getting the two-sided counters and Dean blocks, etc. out straight away in year 7, and she's this bridging process from primary to secondary. She's absolutely nailed it. I mean, it's just so good. So that one was very impressive, and I'll give you some power quotes. I really like Nathan Day again. Like, for a first presentation, absolutely phenomenal. Like, you know, I'm just going to read out one of his slides. Maths is a living subject. Maths will help us build a greater future. We can be the participants in making it so. I mean, that's beautiful. And Lime's Right was her first one as well. What an incredible one, that one. It was about maths anxiety. And it's really about like that kind of social emotional side of learning maths. We all get frustrated at a maths problem when we can't do it. Like, you know, we one of your students asks you already, like, here's question 16D from this higher GCSE paper or an A-level maths paper, and like, wait a minute, I need to like absorb this question. But they're like, what's the answer? Like, so we also get maths anxiety. And one of her quotes was, children won't take risks in learning unless the learning environment feels safe to them. And that's so obvious but so profound at the same time. And unless they feel like that they can be brave enough to ask questions, brave enough to try stuff and get wrong. So I'm like, for me, it's again just reinforcing that I need to just give them that permission to play with it, mess things up, not interrupt them in that process until when I think the time is right. Let them kind of struggle with it a little bit as well, but just create that really, really safe environment.
And that flows through as well, because Mr. Southern Maths was talking about that with his A-level maths. One of the things he was talking about with partial fractions was sort of like introducing part of it, and then the next part, that give them an example which takes the next stage, and let them see why they have to then adjust the methods that they're using, rather than just say, well, for this type question you do this, and for this type question you do that. But I imagine as A-level students, they do feel safe in their environment with the maths. They've got to that point where, although some still, they do not like getting things wrong. So,
I was going to say, sometimes with A-level, because they've found it reasonably straightforward, they're not used to getting things wrong. There are you do come across them students that actually it's a bit of a meltdown for them when they actually can't look at a question and go, oh, I know the answer to that immediately, because they've sort of got into, in a way, poor habits, because they can do it without that before that. So I've seen sort of both sides to that coin.
Yeah, we had a thing with my daughter when I think she was in year 2. And, you know, she's a bright little cookie, but she just expected herself to know everything already. And then her teacher called us in because it was gotten to the stage where if she got something wrong, she'd get extremely distressed and hide under this table and get upset because she thought, well, I should know it. I should be getting it right. Why am I getting it wrong? And so we looked at ways that we can help to support her with that, with things, you know, help her to learn an instrument was a fantastic thing to help her realize that actually you learn by practicing, and it's okay to make mistakes, and nobody is expected to be able to play the flute from the point at which they're born. But that was something I hadn't really considered up until that point. And then to see the impact from a parent's point of view, and then you sort of recognize it and see it more in students in classes, and it really is something that I'm glad is being articulated and spoken about now.
I think it's such a positive thing to highlight misconceptions and use them as learning tools and be like, oh, great, you got it wrong. And then students are like, what do you mean, great, I got it wrong? Well, I can use this, and do you mind if I just visualize, put this on the visualizer? And it's such a strong tool. And oh, thank you for that. You can have an achievement point for letting me show your work. And you've really sort of spoken up. Thank you for being brave. And then maybe, I always say, don't tell me what you've got right, tell me what you've got wrong, especially on retrieval starters. I need to know what you've got wrong. I need to make sure we can fix it. Do you understand your mistake? And it's that safe environment. And I was really thinking about that session about maths anxiety and trying to put myself in the place of those students who do have maths anxiety, and how do they feel when they're sat in my classroom, and trying to get past a bit of my ego about, well, I know how I want them to feel, but how do they actually feel? And when the lesson hasn't gone right, how can I put it right and react? And it's quite a nuanced thing, isn't it? Teaching maths and owning mistakes and not getting things right, and all the cognitive science that goes behind it. And well, Mark McCart just said about 3,000 sort of considerations that we have to make a day. I don't think people, when you sit down and you explain to somebody who's not in the maths classroom what it is that you do on a day-to-day, people are always quite surprised that it's not just you throwing up a huge equation on a whiteboard and then sitting down and letting children sit in silence for 45 minutes.
I love that, and I totally agree.
Right. No, you are.
Sorry, I totally agree with that, and I just I love in my classroom saying to them about misconceptions and getting really excited about it. So if we see a misconception, it's just so much more interesting. Yes, we got something we can actually talk about here. This is brilliant, and just like if you can sort of show that passion to them when you see a misconception and how exciting it is, because it's going to be an interesting discussion, and it doesn't matter that we've got it wrong. One line, whether it's right or wrong, but one line I'll use in my classroom is that if you've tried at this problem and you don't understand it, then that's my fault. And I've got to now consider my explanation for you. So that's on me. Put that on me, challenge me, make me teach you better. And so it sort of takes away that accountability a little bit from them. And then hopefully they feel that they can make a little bit more of a leap and take that risk, because it is just so important, isn't it, for them to be able to offer a suggestion and if it to be completely risk-free is such a delicate and subtle skill, I think, to get that in your classroom.
Absolutely. I think maths is just one of those sessions where it's really easy to pick faults and to be a fault finder and to go, oh, you've got that bit wrong. Sometimes if people know that you're a maths teacher, they always try and ask you a question to see if you're going to get it wrong, and then parade around the fact that, oh, well, you didn't work out the bill right. Well, we could go to restaurants, oh, you're a maths teacher, you can work out the bill. Oh, you got the bill wrong. And you just think, oh, please don't do that. It's really not helpful. If you throw some maths questions at some maths teachers around a table, you can guarantee that there are few of us will be a little bit worried about getting it wrong. So it's just that awareness, isn't it, that it can happen to everybody, and being really careful about those other things that we say.
I think sometimes modelling getting it wrong. I mean, not being frightened to get it wrong yourself. There's a lot of time when I first taught, everything would be on a PowerPoint. I'd work the answers out in advance. I didn't want any risk of anything going wrong. I'm much more confident, especially when you're doing some of them higher GCSE questions. You're doing them you're trying to sort of just try them up when you haven't been working on them, maybe. So might be a Mr. Corbett starter or something like that. And I'm now really determined not to put the answers up. And you look at them higher plus ones, sometimes I'll say to them, I go, I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to start this one. And you start going down a route you quite really, and I think them seeing you do that, again, creates that atmosphere that it's okay to go down the wrong track. Or sometimes you do a really long version and kid at the back puts his hands up and goes, couldn't you just done that in 3 lines? You go, yeah, that was a bit better than mine, actually.
Yeah. More than once. Yeah, sorry.
So I think they don't realise that you have that, and I think they just expect you to kind of know everything. I think when I'm doing, when you do like an A-level trig question, and if it's a showdown or a proof, and actually there's so many different ways a question might go, you don't necessarily know which is definitely the right way. And I always say to them, no, sometimes you'll just the things that you write might be correct and they might be true, but they might not be very helpful. And I say to them sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, like sometimes when there's a question, or like they ask you a question, or like, how do you do this? And you're like, oh, I hope I can do it. And sometimes it doesn't go the right way, and it's actually, this isn't going to be helpful at all. Let's rub it out and do it again. And I think that's really good for them to see. I think that's much more powerful and beneficial than them just seeing, oh, let's flick to the back and look at the printed answers or whatever. Like, so that's you figuring it out along the way, and that's the process they have to go to. And sometimes, and what to do with it when they do go wrong, and how to correct their own mistakes, because they've seen you do that as well. It's really cool, like good for them.
I actually did that on Thursday. I was teaching binomial expansion with my year 12s, and I did it unintentionally. I unintentionally showed the wrong method in expanding double brackets using a factorial notation, because I think I did something like 3x plus 1 to the power 6. So I was doing like, okay, do 6 choose 0 up down to 6 choose 6, and then I put 3x to the power 6 all the way down to 3 to the 0, and then 1 to the power 0 up to the 1 to the power 6. And then when I did the question, I did write the question saying, like, expand 3x plus 1 to the power 6 in ascending powers of x. And I just realized when I did it, it was like, I was plodding along, showing the example, getting the students to contribute. And then when we did the question, I was like, the kids were saying, like, sir, are we meant to be doing ascending powers or descending powers of x? I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. So they were so happy that they found the mistake that I made. So then I made a different example saying, oh, do you know what? Thanks for pointing out a mistake, because actually, that could be you in the exam. So you could have made the same mistake as I did. So it's actually good to learn from your mistakes, so that don't follow what I did. You do the correct method. So yeah, I think it's crucial that actually we show them where the mistakes are, and actually it's good to actually show and see, where are the misconceptions. We do need to show where the misconceptions are for the kids, because otherwise they'll be like thinking, oh, we're in for maths, we just want to learn the perfect answer. But actually, no, we want to learn where the pitfalls are before you get to the correct answer.
We took that into our, sorry.
Yeah,
I was just going to say, sometimes it's better not to give something perfect, sort of something that's a bit rough around the edges, and they can sort of chip in. I mean, Dave, you mentioned something really interesting about letting yourself take the responsibility. Have you experimented with other things, like basically to make students less anxious, like to say, if I haven't sort of taught it right, then that's why you're not really understanding it, rather than them thinking, it's just me feeling sort of like, it's just me because I just don't get it, more being sort of let's work together.
In terms of experiments I've sort of repeated that in lots of different sort of subtle languages. So I sort of talk to them about how positive their work is through other mediums. I'll look at that language about their effort, and look at a growth mindset. I've tried sort of different angles on that, and I guess I sort of just take that as if that's your culture, and that's the way that you do your day-to-day work throughout, then people hopefully open up and take those risks around you. And we took it into our workshop, where it was about modelling mathematics. And so there was a couple of early lessons, online lessons, which I produced, where I looked at them and thought, they're okay, but there's things I don't like about those. And it just felt right then to use them for the misconceptions that we could discuss and put them in the chat. And we asked people to comment and rip it apart. And so if you take that anxiety and sort of hold it yourself, felt properly exposed in a lesson and today, and you take it on, and then it's on your shoulders. And so yeah, in the evenings I do have to maybe have a wind down, but it just means that the people around you that are learning can properly engage in what you're delivering, and then discussing the misconceptions in that way as well. I mean, that they've got more chance of maybe avoiding them. So yes, that's probably another thing to add to how was your first workshop, Atul. It was properly exposed, but no, it was I think that's something, just to have it as your culture, have it as your everyday, and then people start to trust over time as well, I think.
Pete Maddox got the comment on Periscope. Yeah, much like the first workshop, really. I'll often say to them, don't worry if you're getting it right yet. It's just the first time I've asked you to try. Yeah.
First draft of Austin's Butterfly, I think I said last night on Twitter. It's that was our first one, so it's our first draft. It's by definition probably going to be the worst one that I've ever delivered and that we've ever done. But that's how you learn, isn't it?
Oh, I always use that. That is what learning is all about. When it says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't be sorry, that's what learning is all about. If you're getting it right, you're not learning it, you know it.
Yeah. So it's if you come into school, if you already knew it, there wouldn't be any point in already being here. Yeah. And it's like with marking, there was a session in session 6 about assessment, and I really liked, and I do this quite often, I mark the work and I write down the mark, but I don't put the mark on the piece of work when they get it back, so we're not really interested in what you got right. I'm much more interested in what you got wrong. So then when I'm going through it, if you got question 1 wrong, anybody, what else do you put? And we go through that. It's a very opening class, and the dialogue is so much more important than comparing whether they got 7 or 8 out of 10. And they're quite, no, I put this and I put this, and they feel comfortable, I hope, to kind of share their mistakes as we can address them and put them right. Because, and that's like Dave was saying, that's for me to do. I mark it so as I can see what I still have to do to make sure that they understand it. So.
Isn't it Matt McCart's book who talks about, well, what's the point in marking a piece of work and just seeing a sea of ticks and crosses? Just write, there's 2 mistakes on this page, go find them, correct them, and that how powerful that is, instead of just seeing green or red or purple or...
I think he is, and Michael Charles talked as well about that in our latest book club as well. He talked about how I don't want to see the marks on the paper, I don't need to see the ticks, I just want to see you looking for what you can do to progress. What can you spot that misconception? If you can spot that misconception, can you rectify it yourself? If not, come and ask for that support. And it's just a language I've taken back into my class, and since then it's absolutely spot on.
That was a Chris White session, Robert. Rob Smith, I think. Was anyone at that session? Chris White?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, number 6. Yeah. No, it was really good. But do you find sometimes as a maths teacher that it kind of doesn't fit in with your whole school policy sometimes on giving feedback? Because I really want to like not give marks and not give levels, and I just want to look at those misconceptions, and I just want to have dialogue and discussion and not have written feedback, and not, you can't correct like a simultaneous equation by putting a comment on it, but then we're supposed to do marking like by putting comments and things, and I find that can be slightly different for maths than any other subject.
Yeah, we're having that debate on a new Key Stage 3 feedback policy, and myself, the head of science, head of English, got together, and after about 5 hours we've agreed that we do completely different things. We all think we do the right thing, but the problem is the school's insisting that there's got to be at some level something that's common about them. But we've sort of won the battle. I think we've got a really head that really sort of agrees with that idea as well of not giving. So I think we're going down the route that no piece of work will have a grade or a total on, but when they actually see that recorded on what we use Go for Schools, then it has to have something that parents might feel that it's, don't distract it from in the moment when they get it back. Look at the things you got wrong, how you're going to get them right. It doesn't matter basically what the grade is, what the percentage is, what the mark is. They're the bits you need to focus on, and if you look after them, the rest all looks after itself, doesn't it, at the end of the day?
Yeah, I think if the policy really is true to feedback as opposed to marking, then that is a huge shift. And well, Michael Charles this week, he has challenged my thinking even more with that, because I haven't taken home a set of books to mark in a few years now, not since joining the Greenshaw Learning Trust. And I think that's because the emphasis there is on feedback, not marking, not taking home 200 student books every fortnight and making sure they're marked. I remember a ridiculous policy I had previously, and I was head of department at the time, but it comes down from the top on triple impact marking. So I had to mark it, or it had to be marked. I would have to write something in one colour. They would then have to respond in a different colour, and then I would have to respond to that in another. And that was audited. That was checked. The books were taken in to make sure that I did mark them at the frequency of once a fortnight, and that there was the triple impact marking. And I just think, who is that for? Why? What benefit are students going to be getting from this? And is that the best way for teachers to spend their time? And I think if we're not marking and we're giving feedback, then we're able to come to sessions like today and have that opportunity to grow and develop and build that and put that into our planning and our preparation. I wonder if, Mark did a poll the other day where he said, so how many teachers do maths in their own time for fun? And I think if we had less time marking, we'd have more time for things like that.
It's interesting. I think on Twitter in the week that someone posted on it, is the world going to end this week if I didn't mark in green and they didn't respond in purple?
I remember that.
And that was like on Monday or something like that, and you're thinking, if that's what you're worrying about at the moment, you're in a far better position than I am. As far as that's their concern.
I think Rhiannon's right, isn't it? We've got to focus on feedback and policies. I'm hoping most schools have moved away from in triplicate marking now, and stickers in different colours, and peer and self-assess and targets, and really focusing on that feedback. I mean, we mark assessments more than anything else and make sure that we're giving improvement activities across both key stages, and trying to harness that and making sure that our time's spent sensibly. I think that's the thing, isn't it? Marking policies have got to be sensible. I remember, I mean, we've all spent hours and hours on a weekend, haven't we? And if somebody said to me, you've now got to mark every single book, I wouldn't have attended here. And that's the power of sensible, policies, isn't it? In trusts and schools and academies.
And I think a lot's coming through now about the benefits of whole class feedback. And that actually everybody can get something from that. And that's a really good and valuable use of time. And you can get that from exit tickets. You can get that from putting your exit tickets in piles. And Michael Childs said, stop marking your exit tickets, put them in piles, use that to inform your next lesson. And it's just really good to hear, actually.
I'd argue that the most powerful feedback probably comes from within the lesson. Just, have you noticed? Can you just check? Look at, move on to this. Those mini little interactions that you have with the children in front of you is probably way more valuable than you spending 3 hours on a set of books that night. Excellent work. Well done. Underline titles.
Yes.
And it's so much better to be back in the class now that you can kind of from a distance, but you can just glance and see that they're doing that, and just like, oh no, hang on a minute, it's this, and you can hop back to the board and just react really quickly when you can see that there's a bit of a misconception developing. So yeah, so glad to be back in school. Makes it much easier.
I'm tempted to play devil's advocate with that, because I'm thinking like actually during the online sort of remote learning session. So what I've really learned actually over that was I think actually with this was, I think actually I might mention this, whiteboard.fi, I just investigated whiteboard.fi and introduced that website, put sort of exit ticket questions up there. So obviously the students will do their own work individually in their own mini whiteboard, but the teacher sees every single pupil's thing. And I find that to be genuinely really, really interesting, because I found out beforehand when I used to do online lessons, it was more like answer on the chat on Teams, check, green, amber, red, you okay with that topic? But then when I switched to my thinking towards whiteboard.fi, because they're all writing along their own whiteboards, I can already instantly see kind of what, how well they're doing with their maths. And I genuinely find that to be really powerful. It saves on board, investing on so many mini whiteboards and whiteboard pens, because they'll go missing or whatever. So they could, go on this whiteboard.fi and just check on how they're doing. The feedback I was giving, I was able to get whole class feedback from there, and also give individualized feedback. So what I normally do is I stream probably like the whole lesson on. So stream like the teacher's view, but obviously what I would view is only view the teacher's board, and probably give them like a couple of minutes to think. Or 2 minutes or 3 minutes, and then after that 2-3 minutes I'll then scroll down so they can see what I'm viewing, and then they can see how each of them are doing. I find that to be really powerful. I mean, it's just I'm just playing devil's advocate in that sense, because I personally prefer obviously face to face, but I felt actually during the online period that was probably as close as you can get to face sort of interaction.
I mean, definitely being online, there's things like I learned so much tech that I would never have used before. So I used whiteboard.fi and then started using Desmos, which I've never explored before. And now I'm just an absolute convert. I just love Desmos, so I use it all the time. And that's similar, so you can see as they're working through, you can see all their screens as well. And I'm so almost grateful that I got to learn that, because I probably wouldn't have experimented with it if we'd have been in class. But
Yeah, you don't need to
Kirsty
convince
gave-
me, so because
Yeah.
I do it all the time. But yeah, just very quickly, all this technology obviously needs quite a lot of training and a lot of effort. But like what you've all done within like with 1 day notice from the government is like mastered so many different complicated parts of online teaching, and even with that limited time, you can see some benefits of using a whiteboard technology. You can get those individual answers, and you can, even when they're not scribbling, you know, actually they probably haven't got it, or they're disengaged or whatever. That itself is a feedback as well, and these things will become more and more prominent in the classroom as well. I'm completely confident of it, all this technology and everything you've done in these last 2 months. It might seem like utter pain, but like learning anything, which is going to be utter pain, but a lot of this stuff will come in really, really useful in the classroom. I like using a graphics tablet, a visualizer better, whiteboard if you need to. Also, you just become more aware of sort of the body language in real life, because it's not been there online. You've developed sort of this your sixth sense as a teacher. You know, Mark said you're doing 3,000 experiments. You probably be doing 6,000 experiments online. So you don't realize it yet, but once you've done more of this, even in the classroom for long, and a bit of online stuff, it'll help in both ways. And certainly was the case for me when I was mixing the two. Both complement each other so well. Sorry, you go ahead, Nikki. Sorry, I interrupted you.
And I was going to, no, it's okay. I was just going to pick up on the Desmos, because in Kirsty's session, which was for the love of maths, which was brilliant. It was like bringing the joy we have of maths into the classroom. But she said quite a few things actually, which have crossed over with other people, such as the safe environment, keep them safe, and that applies for obviously maths as well. The I don't know, which Mr. Southern Maths was saying as well. Be prepared to say I don't know to students if they ask you something. But also the Desmos as well. She shared some brilliant Desmos activities and the links to those. And the amount, I'm not sure about everyone else, but the list of things I've got to go, oh, I need to go and have a look at that. I need to go and have a look at that. Just, yeah, phenomenal from a day like this.
And it comes back to what Mark was saying when he asked, again, that poll the other day, how many mathematicians do maths, or how many maths teachers do maths in their own time? And it's all those things that Kirsty was talking about today, all the things that we want to do. Well, if we want to do it, and that ignites interest and intrigue in us, then it's only beneficial if we can somehow harness that and utilize that with students too, just to keep us motivated and keep us moving towards other things, not just, while it's very important, the grade that they'll get to acknowledge where they are at this particular point in time, but to help to see them beyond, really, when they're just studying maths.
Pete Maddox got some more comments on the marking. I don't remember. I don't mark anything but mock exams, and haven't for as long as I can remember. Logically, triple impact marking could have worked if done properly, but the benefit was potentially small for large cost.
Yes.
Yeah, I think a lot of it might have been used as an opportunity to check frequency and that marking is happening, rather than necessarily looking at it as an opportunity for feedback. And yeah, pretty much the only thing I mark now are mock papers. I've done for a few years, and it's just been a revelation.
I can see if somebody's like just, I don't know, missed off the units, or they've just got, you know, a little minor mistake wrong, then you can correct that on paper. But if they've just got a whole massive misconception, or let's say they've done a whole simultaneous equation wrong, what can you say? You can't write, no, first of all, you should have done this, and then you should have done this. That needs to be a discussion. You have to, you know, just leave it. I don't want to put crosses all over their work, because that's rubbish. I just want to talk to them about it the next lesson and fix it. So,
it was so ingrained in me from teaching practice and the schools that I'd been in, that you mark and mark and mark and mark. And, you know, when your Facebook memories come up and it's like, oh, I've spent 7 hours on a Saturday marking.
Yeah.
And I've moved to a new school in September where, you know, SLT are very much aware of the efforts that staff put into planning and building relationships and everything else that goes in. And my boss in the maths department is also very aware of those things. So yeah, we've moved. I've moved to a school that's very sensible about marking, but it's taken a lot for me to let go of that. It's so sort of, I must tick or cross every single and then leave a mark and leave a target and then leave an improvement task and write an individual question. And it's so onerous. And I think I'd almost become sort of indoctrinated into this. I must mark in green and the children must respond in red. And actually looking back, how many hours have I wasted when actually that could have been spent discussing a concept? And I think now I've got the time and I'm spending that on, it's trusting your staff, isn't it? I spend that time now trawling through other people's websites and Padlets and looking at different journals and getting involved in the George Stone Journal Club on a monthly basis, or watching the book club, shameless plug for you. And I've joined Teach Meets as well, shameless plug for me. But that's because I have the mental capacity on a weekend or an evening to think about these things.
I also think that there isn't that pressure during lessons now, where if the students are quiet doing their deliberate practice, how often would teachers be sat down trying to just sneak in marking a few more books while they've got a few minutes? We're up and we're around the classroom and we're being more responsive in our teaching and we're knowing our students better, which means that with everything else going on at the moment, actually, we know our students better more this year when it comes to thinking about the next steps with the decisions we need to make with our exam classes than if we would have been taking in their books every 2 weeks and ticking and crossing things, because you can't take all of that in. It's too much cognitive overload. But when we are focusing on what we're doing in class, we really do get to know those individual students more so. And I think that's going to be a real strength moving forwards with whatever is happening with GCSEs and A levels this year and next, with helping to support our students through, they've never been through a year 11 before. They don't know what it has been like previously. We're the ones that have that experience for it. And I really appreciated listening to Neil Ogden when he was talking today about advice and guidance for reading mark schemes and how to do some work as a team in a department to make sure you're consistent. And was it Ian Andrews who did the session earlier on today from AQA about their ideas and what they've done with their grades last year and what they're thinking about doing this year. And I just found it so incredibly reassuring that it also wasn't, let's go and make sure that we're marking all of these different things and you've got to have these ticks and crosses. It was bigger picture than that. So yeah, there was just so much from today. It was fantastic.
Do you think
please don't tweet me though with any hatred, because I understand that what works in one school won't work in another. So please don't be like, this really works and I really like it. You're wrong, Gemma. So please, I understand that it is different for everybody.
I think Phil, you had something to add as well.
Yeah, I was just gonna sort of ask, do you think that you can use marks sort of in a constructive way? Because what I've seen is often you have a student who's come in at the beginning of term and really not understood much, and sort of they can get a certain mark and sort of it can be really low. And then when they see themselves sort of week in, week out, sort of coming in and they're slowly getting better and better. And I guess it's quite good when they're doing like those online activities, like sort of on Heggerty Maths. Then they can just see themselves getting better and they come back and do sort of similar questions and then they're actually getting better and better and better. Like, I suppose there's sort of in a way, there's sort of a bit of a role for those sorts of marks to play and sort of just building confidence. I suppose, yeah, not just endless marking, but sort of, yeah, if they can see themselves getting better and better, then they can sort of be used as sort of a constructive, sort of like almost like a guiding path.
But I think they can feel more confident and feel that they're getting better without a number attached to it, because like one activity, you could do an activity and then 2 weeks later do another activity, which is just a lot harder. And so if then they got like worse marks, they might feel that they weren't improving. Yeah. Whereas actually conceptually they are understanding better. If they, I don't know, and then just a change of topic, you can be doing one topic which is quite straightforward, and so like I said, if you get some really high numerical marks, but then you change and suddenly you introduce a new algebra topic, and if their marks plummet, they feel like they were getting worse.
I'm gonna.
I think it's the argument of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation there, isn't it? About and it's that cost benefit. So I think personally, looking at the intrinsic motivation, the extrinsic in that score will short term give them that boost maybe, but the bigger picture, the longer term picture, you want them focusing rather on a score. You want them focusing on what was it that they could do to improve. And I think that longer term, the less that you're using your marking and your scores. And the more you're focusing on the misconceptions and that intrinsic motivation of understanding what it is you got wrong and then getting it right the next time, and that great feeling when you do that, think that that's the journey that's going to have the sort of most productivity and the most progress.
I do think there's definitely a role for recognition as well. I am one who does continue to write on pupils' work. It's not necessarily marking everything, but I will write on students' work, and I will recognise their successes, and I'm very much in belief that success breeds motivation as well. And so like as maths teachers, I think we do that feedback thing anyway, because everything you kind of plan to do is based on what you have seen before from the students. You know that, you see it, you build it up, and you put that whole class feedback in. But there's definitely place for recognition individually, which you can't do in the whole class feedback.
Yeah, I mean, they still love rewards, like, you know, even year 10 and 11, they love a gold star, and they, you know, definitely like a well done, and still acknowledge their work. And
we like that too. If you think about whenever you have a staff awards or something, how lovely it is to have your name up there, or to be the person that's got it. It can just be a little certificate, or even just a nomination. That's all it takes.
It's even just that little comment as you walk past. I know some of my shyer pupils just, oh, that's beautiful. Like, I use that word quite a lot. That graph's drawn beautifully, that equation's laid out beautifully, or excellent, well done. Just that little drop of motivation, like you say, success breeds motivation, doesn't it? As you walk past, you just get little as they carry on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like that word beautiful as well. I do have some stickers which just say beautiful maths to put on there. That's some beautiful maths there.
I was talking about quadratic graphs and how beautiful the parabola was. I was like, there's something quite sexy about a parabola. And the kids were like, oh! I was like, no, they're really.
Oh, gosh.
I know it's an odd word for a teacher to use, but it is. There's something really lovely. And we were creating the story of, well, if you don't have that beautiful parabola on a roller coaster, you're going to come flying off. And all those videos we've seen of people on water slides and they miss the pool at the end. Well, that's because their graphs were wrong, and they've worked out their quadratics incorrectly. So their parabola's not correct, children. And I was showing this story of these beautiful curves, and we were having a bit of a laugh and a joke, and they were like, really you think that you genuinely think that's beautiful? I was like, it is a beautiful graph. But that's what we were saying at the beginning of the conversation, wasn't it? Getting our joy and getting our passion across.
Yeah, that brings me actually to one of the first workshops I attended was Daniel Piercy's conveying the beauty of maths. And if you are enthusiastic about it, if you think it's beautiful, and as Mark again said, the social cues are so obvious. The children just pick up on it naturally, and it's the way in which you convey your own enthusiasm of the subject. If you think it's beautiful, your students will believe it, and they will try and find the beauty in it as well.
I think it's definitely obvious, especially at A level, and there's topics that I absolutely love, and I can sense that the kids that I've taught they love the same subjects I love, and I don't know, maybe some of the graph work I don't love so much, or curve sketching when it is on, and I probably don't love that as much as I love the algebra kind of side of it. But when we do trigonometry, I love trigonometry. And so I actually start the lessons, I put a title of trigonometry, I'm like, right, children, copy this down, and the first time I write is trigonometry is our favourite A-level topic. And we're like, yeah, and then we love this, and I just put smiley faces and hearts all over it, and we get things right. And but they do, and they're like, no, we do love this, don't we? And I'm like, yeah, we do.
Was it the dyscalculic session that was talking about passing on maths anxieties?
Yeah, that was Lime's right. Yeah, she did some research on it, and the maths anxiety is passed on. If the teacher has maths anxiety, that can be passed on to the children, and they're quite sensitive to that anxious feeling.
So that links to what you were just saying, Lucy, wasn't it, about passing on our passions. I think we've probably got to be equally aware of that. Actually, I don't like, I am going to get murdered for this, but I don't like data handling as much as I like the algebra. I am going to get a lot of hate for that, I know, because there was a huge Twitter poll about statistics the other week, wasn't there?
No, I think Mark would support that, though.
But I mean, I said at the beginning of my session, actually, like I was very maths and physics and stuff at school. I liked the mechanics. If you'd asked me what my favourite maths was, it was always mechanics. And I made myself do more statistics at uni because I thought I know I want to teach. I better get myself a bit more rounded here, and like I'll have to take some of these statistics modules. And actually doing it more and practicing it more, that's what made me love it. So, you know, it is the anxiety, isn't it? It's the things we don't know, the things we don't understand as well. Those are the things we don't enjoy, and those things we don't like. And so,
well, yeah, I did a primary maths degree, so I spent 4 years at university doing the history of maths and some statistics, and you know, pedagogy behind different aspects of primary maths. And I'm an early years specialist. That's what my degree was in. But so our maths lectures, half of our course, that was great. We were all passionate about it. That was lovely. But whenever it would be the whole cohort going to a lecture for everybody on the BEd side of it that was to do with maths, they'd groan, they'd complain, they weren't sure. It would really, really unsettle so many students. I'm talking like a cohort of 150 students. There was I tangibly noticed the change when it was a maths lecture we would go to. And so that just really started me thinking, well, I don't want to be teaching all of the subjects. I think I really need to change this idea around maths, because if there's a negativity coming from my colleagues who are training to go into primary, please don't get me wrong, this is not all primary teachers, this was just my experience of a number of students in my cohort, then I want to do something about that, because they're going on and adding that to the future generations that they're working with. And that really made me then think of the aspects of my teaching that maybe I'm not as passionate about as others, and maybe how that is being shared with students somehow without me realizing it.
It comes
with the maths anxiety as well. Oh, sorry, Lucy. I'll just say with the maths anxiety as well, that when you pass it on to somebody else, that's very much where my passion is about taking it from them as well, because I feel that you can do it the other way. And so those lines of "it's my fault, not yours," of actually trying to sort of pull that anxiety from them is trying to push it the other way, I think.
I love what you say with that as well, and I think that's just it's benefits to our teaching as well, because actually it's true. If they haven't learned something, we need to do something about it, not them. If they're trying and listening, it as well as taking that anxiety away from them, we need to think, well, what do we need to do to help them?
Yeah, something as well, Lucy.
I was going to say, I think it was in Kirsty's session. It's the parent rhetoric as well, that they come to parents' evening and they go, "Yeah, I was never very good at maths as well." And she said something really good. She said that when a parent comes and says, you know, you've got a child that's struggling, and they say, "Oh, I always hated maths as well," which is somehow really acceptable in maths. They would never come and say, "Oh, yeah, I hate reading as well." But she said, just say to them, "Well, I'm really sorry you had a bad experience. Please help me change this for your child." And I thought that was amazing and lovely, and just acknowledge that perhaps they didn't have a good experience, but that doesn't mean that their child doesn't have to have one, and let's all work together, and let's not keep saying that in front of them, that it's okay not to like maths, and can we all make it like better, because you know we can all love maths.
Yeah,
oh, sorry, Phil.
There's like a big myth, like, you know, I guess you've got a maths brain in the family, and if you don't have the maths brain, then your child doesn't have a maths brain either.
Yeah.
You know, I guess everybody thinks that.
And I like to share with them the idea that everybody is at their own level, and so I'll sort of demonstrate to them with a nice simple sum of 2 + 2, and so do you get that? Yeah, that's too easy. Well, that's not too easy for my son at the moment, who's 4 years old. He really struggles with that sum. Yet if you were to go and talk to one of our maths teachers, then maybe yes, it would be just far too difficult for you. But there's a level that you're at, and if you're moving yourself on, that's all that you should be concentrating on, your sort of competition with yourself almost. And so just demonstrating to them that everybody's at that level, where some things are too easy, everybody has that. Some things are too difficult, everybody has that. And where's your level? It's not about being good or bad at maths, it's about knowing your level.
I absolutely love that. And my husband laughed at me a few weeks ago because during half term I bought an art box, like one of these free the things teach you how to do a little bit of art, and it was a child's box. And he said, "Oh, have you bought that for the children?" I was like, "No, I've bought that for me. That's the level I'm at. I'm not ready for the adult level. I'm at the child level for art." And I was quite happy to say that at art. It's the same with everything. We're at the level we're at, and we're all on our own journey, and we're moving on from that point.
Yeah.
Sounds like me with technology.
It's the same thing, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't,
it's just-
I'm not a tech person, I'm not a maths person, I'm not a singing person, I'm not a dance person, I'm not XYZ. Yeah.
And it's just having it when somebody says to you, "Oh, have you done this?" Or I haven't done that yet. Because I might not know how to do it now, but it doesn't mean that I won't be able to learn how to do it. And if we're doing that with our colleagues and our families and our students, hopefully they'll get to pick up on that too. I mean, Atul, you're awesome at what you do, but you've worked really hard at it. But it's not something that you were just overnight able to do. Your fantastic work with your online different platforms that you seamlessly transition from one thing to another. You've consciously worked at that.
Oh, and it's a painful journey. It takes years, and let's not deny that. And in any learning, it's taken a lot of time and a lot of getting stuff wrong, especially tech and online. Lots of stuff. It's fraught with. Anything can go wrong. It's so fragile. Online teaching, it goes wrong very regularly. Brilliant. Yeah, we'll wrap up here. I promised we won't do any more than 1.25, but it's so good that despite all that screen time, I could probably do another 1.25 hour. Julia's got some nice reflections along with Julia. Julia ran a competition in her session. What's your answer to "I hate maths"? We've all heard it so many times. I was at that session. I remember it. I was at a MathsConf. So we'll wrap up. We'll start to wrap up. Actually, I wanted to take one more question that was it wasn't a MathsChatLive question, but it was by Tayyub Majid. It's a specific bit of teaching maths that was to Dave and Rhiannon actually on your workshop. Why do some teachers find A-level maths and further maths vector questions easier to deal with than GCSE vector questions?
I was sort of ready to answer this, and then I've just looked at the Twitter thread around it, and there's so many better answers that I was going to give. So I probably should just leave it to them, to be honest. It's all about the subject knowledge and the depth of the subject knowledge. So I really don't think that this answer is going to be terribly satisfying. But I think it's about the making the links and the schema and the knowledge that you have at GCSE to be able to maybe access it, and the way then the GCSE questions are designed compared to the A-level. So for me, it's about the level of knowledge that the students have and the level of knowledge you might need to be able to explore it in more depth. It's different from GCSE towards that movement towards A-level, and it's far more complex. I've just put there, but it's a start to answering that question.
And that what comes with that's the mathematical maturity as well, the opportunity for them to have digested and taken on board what they've been learning for the past countless years in school almost. And as you said, making those connections, that I think it's easier to do with A-level students. But then as a teacher, why am I more comfortable and confident and more successful actually in the challenging A-level and further maths vectors questions than I am in that question at the end of that GCSE paper on vectors the other year? I think, what was it? The scalar was 3. And you could get that by actually drawing the lines on the diagram, even though it said not to scale. But working through the algebra for that just seems so unnecessarily complicated.
I just have to blame the exam board for that, don't we? How about if we don't label the exam question as a GCSE or A-level maths or further maths, would we get a different response,
Yeah, I do vectors with right at the beginning, like when what you would call year 1 equivalent. Roll a dice, move the 1 vector, you get a 6 on a dot pattern, move the 6. So I'm giving this directionality of number already right from that young age. And I know Pete Matic does a lot of really good stuff on vectors right through the ages. Why wait all the way up to GCSE to start that topic of vectors when it's already there in physics, for example, scalars and vectors anyway. So it's yeah. Brilliant. We're gonna wrap up there. It's been thank you for your time. I know it's a very, very long screen day, and Lucy and Dave and Rhiannon, you have also presented, and I know, and so have I. So it's the extra stress of all of that. So thank you for your time, and thank you for everyone on Twitter and Periscope for engaging. It's been really good, and again, it's great to see you engaging despite such a long day. So we clearly are still buzzing, and last but not least, again, the whole LaSalle community, and again, Mark McCord for joining us as well. So I'm going to end this live stream, and then we won't be streaming anymore, and then it'll just be us. We'll talk for about 5-10 minutes, and then we can wrap it up there. And we'll just wave a goodbye to everyone on Twitter. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.